Americans in this
Thank
country.
you. Thank you.
So-
And what I have been trying to teach the Asian community is like, friends, do you understand that your success, your prosperity, your civil rights that you enjoy right now was paid for with black blood?
Yes.
Right? And the fact that you don't recognize that shows you how much you take this for granted and how much you don't care about the future. Because
Yes.
if you understood this, you would be grateful for their sacrifice and understand what they have gone through for you to have rights.
I'm mad at Asian Americans because why are we so smart but so silent? What's with the silence? I suspect that if we opened our mouths, we would side with black people and other brown people as the real American heroes. Yeah, we're brown, not white. But this would disrupt the white supremacy brainwash we're caught in. And deep down, we hate ourselves for siding with whiteness. We know they're wrong. Our silence is the sound of us hating ourselves. But that's the Squid Game trap that they set for us, an Asian American matrix that messes with our reality. And it's all based on hating black people. You know, the ones we're all secretly trying to copy, even the white people's. White supremacy isn't smart, but it's tricky like that. You like being tricked? I don't know any Asians who put up with that. We gotta decolonize ourselves and find Asian joy. Therein lies our voice.
To all the Asian people that are saying that black people are silent about Asian issues, and to all the black people that are saying Asians are silent about black issues, who are your friends? Do you have a diverse friend group? And where do you get your news? Is it a news source that lacks that same diversity that your friend group lacks? Because maybe you don't hear them talking about it because you're not even friends with them. And you don't really even make the effort to be friends with them. But every time I do try to interact with them, they're malicious towards me, really, every single time? Every single one of them? Or maybe you're allowing a handful of experiences to determine how you feel about an entire group of people, which quite literally is the definition of racism and prejudice. It's so much easier to just say, oh, they're silent, because it allows you to shed any responsibility whatsoever in terms of creating more solidarity. But we're all human, you know, so forgive yourself for projecting the fact that you actually don't care. And start caring for these people who are human, who are battling for their humanity just like you.
The Asian community is literally so anti-black, and it literally fucking pisses me off. Like, we are literally so uneducated, uninformed, just misinformed, everything about the black community, and it pisses me off. And like, it just boggles my mind how a lot of Asians see black people as beneath them. I shit you not, I literally saw someone on my story and I literally was so gagged. Like, I was like, are you serious right now? And I sent him a message, ask him if he's being serious about this. This guy is Bhutanese. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, but like, I guess he got like some kind of spray tan or whatever because he's doing some kind of stupid movie shoot or whatever. Roy posts on his story and says, because his skin is like 10 shades darker or something, he said, "Can I say the N-word now?" with a ninja emoji next to it. I slid up so fucking quick and I asked this man, are you fucking serious right now? And guess what? That man left me on red. Need I say again that he is not black? He is Bhutanese from Bhutan or whatever the fuck you pronounce it. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. Quite honestly, like, the Asian community is literally so underhandedly racist to the black community, and it just, like, not to mention the black community is one of the most supportive of marginalized groups that has ever, like, uplifted the Asian community and actually put effort into supporting us. I'm probably gonna piss a lot of Asians off for saying that, but it's literally the truth, and I fucking see it for what it is.
This couldn't be farther from the truth. In fact, our greatest allies have been the black community. Black and Asian solidarity has a long, long history. And that's not to erase the examples from both sides of intolerance, hate, and violence. But at our best, we have long fought alongside each other, such as Frederick Douglass advocating for Chinese and Japanese immigration in 1869. Or when Henry Turner and Ida B. Wells spoke out on behalf of Filipino freedom fighters. Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Martin Luther King, and many black protesters condemning the violence and war in Vietnam. Japanese Americans fighting alongside the black community to repeal the Emergency Detention Act. The powerful relationship between Yuri Kochiyama and Malcolm X. Grace Lee Boggs and her husband James Boggs. Jesse Jackson, the NAACP for Vincent Chin, and the majority of Asian Americans who support the Black Lives Matter.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Rica's Take. Today we are talking about something deep, a message from Asian American readers who said that many immigrant communities, include Asians, build their success in America on foundation created by and protected by Black Americans. Let's break it down clearly and respectfully.
Seen a few comments like this with, Asians and Black people fighting in my comment section. And honestly, it shows how little we actually talk about the history behind all of this. The tension didn't just magically appear. It was shaped by decades of laws, segregation, stereotypes, and political narratives that pushed our communities apart. When Asian immigrants first came to the US, they weren't allowed to live just anywhere. Segregation forced them into Black and brown neighborhoods because those were the only areas open to anyone who wasn't white. So Asians and Black Americans were physically close, but not always connected. Different languages, different histories, limited communication, misunderstandings grew out of that. Then in the 1960s, during the Civil Rights Movement, the US created the model minority myth. The idea that Asian Americans were successful, quiet, and proof that racism doesn't exist. That stereotype was never meant to lift Asians up. It was meant to contrast Asians against Black Americans and basically say, see, they're doing fine, why can't you? It was a political tool that built resentment and pressure on both sides, even though neither community created that narrative. At the same time, anti-Blackness already existed in some Asian cultures because of colonialism, colorism, and Western media influence. And for some Black Americans, their only interactions with Asians were through local businesses, corner stores, nail salons, restaurants, situations that were transactional, not relational. That created frustration and stereotypes on both sides. But here's the thing. In both communities, it's only a small handful of people who are actually hateful or racist. A few loud, ignorant individuals do not represent millions of us. We can't let the worst examples define entire communities. Then COVID hit and all of this got amplified again. Anti-Asian hate skyrocketed. Elderly Asians were attacked, harassed, and blamed for the virus, all because of fear and political scapegoating. Some of the viral videos showed attackers who were Black, and suddenly that tiny number of incidents turned into a whole narrative online like Black people hate Asians, which was inaccurate and unfair. What people forget is that Black activists and Black organizations publicly stood with Asian communities during that time. People protested for us. They protected Asian elders. They spoke out against the hate. But the media rarely highlighted the solidarity, only the violence. And yes, some Asians responded by generalizing those incidents and blaming the entire Black community, which made things even worse, even though the majority of Black people had nothing to do with those attacks. COVID didn't create new racism. It exposed what was already unaddressed and made stereotypes louder because everyone was scared and hurting. But amid all of that, we forget that historically there has also been real solidarity. Asian American activists learned organizing strategies from Black civil rights leaders. Filipino and Black farm workers united under Larry Itliong and Cesar Chavez. Japanese American activists stood with the Black Panthers. Yuri Kochiyama worked alongside Malcolm X. In Oakland, Black and Asian communities built programs together to fight poverty and injustice. These are real alliances. They just don't get talked about as much as the conflicts. That's why we need to zoom out. A handful of ignorant people shouldn't define entire communities. A bad experience shouldn't turn into a stereotype. We shouldn't let old narratives and old wounds be recycled and divide us again. Asians and Black people have both faced discrimination, exclusion, violence, and being treated like outsiders. We have more in common than we think, and when we work together, there's real power, real healing, and real progress. We just have to stop letting fear, stereotypes, and misinformation talk louder than the history and solidarity we actually come from.
Since you ask, Black people in the United States on average were more successful than Asian Americans up until the 1950s and 60s when the United States started pushing the model minority myth. If you look at census data from the 1940s, Black people were earning significantly more than Asian people. But the United States was engaging in military actions in Asia under the guise of bringing democracy and fighting against communism when the rest of the world started to wonder, with the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, the Chinese Exclusion Act, and Jim Crow, what business did the United States have being in another continent telling other countries how to operate when they treat their own people so poorly? That's when the United States started to say, no, Asians are doing great. They work hard, they're quiet, they don't protest, and they are lifting themselves up by their bootstraps out of poverty. The problem is Black people who are protesting. And opportunities that were previously withheld from both Black and Asian people started being provided to Asian people and continued to be withheld from Black people. Then in 1964, when the Civil Rights Amendment finally passed and Black people were supposed to receive equitable access to those opportunities, in 1965, the United States opened the door to Asian immigration with the Hart-Celler Act and continued giving those opportunities to Asian people. Very importantly, the ability and resources to open, own, and operate businesses in Black neighborhoods, which effectively deprived Black people of the ability to invest in their own neighborhoods. Now, in case you're still thinking, no, it really is about emphasis on education, by the 1980s, an Asian American without a high school diploma was earning about the same as a white person without a high school diploma, and both were earning significantly more than a Black person without a high school diploma. So that has nothing to do with educational attainment and everything to do with the opportunities provided. But also that you inserted yourself in a conversation between two Asian Americans to weaponize Asian American identity against Black people is just gross.
I don't poor Asians commit a lot of murders.
Also a great question. Asian people weren't originally brought to America on purpose like Black people, and they weren't already present here like natives.
So blacks murder because they were brought here 250 years ago?
No, I would like to finish.
Okay, just answer. It's very simple.
I am answering.
No, I know, but you're not really.
I am. Asian Americans predominantly immigrate here for work reasons. They come from already wealthy countries. They're already wealthy when they get here. Crime is committed primarily by
First of all, that's not true. Talk to anybody from Vietnam. Who's Vietnamese? Anybody? Did your family come here wealthy?
No.
Yes,
not wealthy, but not.
Yes or no?
They come here. Okay.
The average Vietnamese does not come here wealthy.
I completely agree, and that's why I wanted to talk about this in a historical context. When you go back in time to the 60s and 70s, where there was legit community and coalition building between Black and Asian peoples and communities, you had pillars in the Asian community like Bruce Lee speaking out very loudly against police brutality, very loudly against racism, educating men in dismantling toxic masculinity. Like, Bruce Lee was not just about, like, beat people up. Bruce Lee was the biggest proponent of, if you can beat them with your brains, then beat them with your brains. But if not, then force needs to be used. And when he passed away, his son was carrying those same ideals in the 80s and 90s, virulently pushing me back on this kind of idea of not only the Asian nerd, but the emasculation of Asian men and its effects on the Asian male psyche. But unfortunately, with his passing as well, just like how the U.S. government proliferated, the crack epidemic in the Black community, how they did gerrymandering to disenfranchise Black voters, how they incarcerate Black people at a rate 6 to 10 times higher than white people. They then created this idea of the model minority myth in the 80s and 90s and brought over the brain drain from Asia to America, specifically to create a wedge between Black and Asian peoples, because of the solidarity in the 60s and 70s. And so that's why you see a resurgence in like the 90s and early 2000s, because those were the kids of the people who had solidarity in the 60s and 70s. And you constantly see white media trying to push back on this narrative for like two broke girls having that, Asian stereotype. And solidarity is at an all-time low because Asian men are now doing the work of the white supremacist system on themselves. And that's like what the most disheartening part of it is that our history teaches us that solidarity is the key. But when the system erases our history, that's when solidarity breaks down. And that's why it's so important to know what's happening.
Many Asian Americans who speak on this topic explain like this. When immigrants arrived in the United States from Asia, Latin America, the Caribbean, or anywhere else, America was already very different country because of civil rights, victory Black American fought for. Before the civil rights movement, most immigrants wouldn't allow to enter in different places, such as neighborhoods, attend schools, to vote freely local elections, to get fair works protection, seek justice under equal laws with white people. Those rights expanded because of Black American organized, to protest, and they went to court to demand human dignity. What you don't know, they fight for the change. They change the law for everyone. Every people who didn't even alive yet. Asian American voice, like in the clip, we didn't come here to succeed alone. Many doors were already open because of Black American. They pushed the door to be open for everyone, even people from Asia. They never reached yet. It is not about greed, it is about gratitude and history. And it's remember community can stand stronger when they stand each other, you know, to help other people who coming from different places. I still have another clips. Let's watch them. I come back with a comment.
I'm making this video as an Asian American to address my fellow Asian Americans who engage in anti-Black racism. Let's talk about this. For example, this right-wing Asian says, let me list all the problems that Black Americans face that is shared by people of no other race. Okay, list over. Yes, it is true. If a Black person has a problem, an Asian or white person has the same problem somewhere in America. There's nothing special about your race. This is, in short, white supremacy talking points. Let's address this. Here's just a very short list of the unique suffering that Black Americans have had to and still have to go through. 266 years enslavement, 99 years of Jim Crow, 300% maternal mortality rate, 2% the wealth of whites, explicitly denied the GI Bill, FHA loans, and college admissions, and Social Security access. SCOTUS ruled approval to commit Black genocide in Buck versus Bill, which, by the way, has never actually been overruled. Arrested 10 times more than whites for the exact same acts. And don't even get me started on the dozens and dozens of Black massacres committed by white supremacists throughout American history, through the 1980s, by vigilante groups, and by state government. Massacres for which reparations were never paid, and none of the white supremacists were ever held accountable. And as an Asian American and human rights lawyer, I'm acutely aware of the anti-Asian racism throughout American history. Everything from the Chinese Exclusion Act to the Asiatic Exclusion League to the outright ban on Asian immigration in 1924. So how ridiculous do you think it sounds when Asians are anti-Black, when it was Black Americans and Black civil rights leaders who ensured that Asians would get their immigration rights back as part of the 1965 Civil Rights Acts? The civil rights movement influenced U.S. immigration policy intimately because Black civil rights leaders recognized their own history and did not want that same suffering on Asian Americans. Therefore, leaders like Dr. King demanded that Asian Americans, Latino Americans, basically anyone non-white immigrating to the United States would be given dignity and humanity. And finally, let's address this nonsense claim that Black people are the reason why Asian Americans can't get admission to Harvard or other Ivy League schools. Affirmative action is not your problem, because if you really blamed affirmative action, you would be blaming white women. Why? Because more white women have benefited from affirmative action than every other racial demographic and minority combined. Yet, at no point do these Asian Americans who are anti-Black and blame Black people for affirmative action even bring up white women. Moreover, over 43% of white admissions to schools like Harvard would not have gotten admissions on credentials alone. They got admitted because they're legacy students. And the data shows that 3/4 of those white students were not qualified academically, meaning they took the spot of a more qualified Black, Latino, or Asian person. But it's funny how these anti-Black Asians have zero regard for this white supremacist policy of legacy, but they want to blame Black people. This is white supremacy in a nutshell. And to those Asians who say, hey, look, I stand with Black people, I don't believe in this kind of anti-Black racism, that isn't enough. You need to speak out and condemn this injustice with your voice and your actions. Class dismissed.
Why the not? Black history is American history, is it not? I'm Asian, but I'm American. Am I not? So because I'm Asian, I should stick to just talking about Asian people? Is that what you're saying? My kids are half Black. Should I tell them I'm not allowed to talk about Black history because I'm Asian? Am I supposed to stick to my own race? It's 2025, Moni Love. Get your together.
I've never answered a question like this before, and it cuts me up. Like, what did they have to tell you to make you hate us? So in Asian families, especially immigrant Asian families, we have our own version of a race talk. Mine was a Chinese family, and in our house, the talk sounded like soft racism, not like eugenics. There was never any insulting of Black intelligence or Black abilities or Black people. It was more practical than that. And it was all about safety. If you want to be safe, you have to align yourself with power. And if you want a piece of the American dream, you need to follow the money, follow the power, and that meant following the white brick road. My dad told me that I could marry a white man or a Chinese man, but preferably a white man and not a Black man. So what's unspoken there is that Asian men don't have much power either, and black men have less, but white men have all the power. And me, as an Asian girl, had no power at all, that all of my power depended on a man. So it's not just soft racism, it's also soft sexism. And that is the model minority brainwash in a nutshell. It is based on a terrible dark side of the American dream that is anti-Blackness. It cuts me to the core. In the middle of war and chaos, we're talking about joy. We win. Black Americans, as the definitive artists of joy, thank you for sharing thousands of recipes for Black joy in my last video. It's complex and I don't pretend to understand it all, but I loved how your recipes pointed to this total positivity anchored to God, but also rooted in pain, forging this iron love and trust of self. Huge admiration for how you live every day in decolonized space. You know what I realized reading them all? That even if I get book smart and memorized all the recipes, I can never know what you know because I am ancestrally and genetically different as a Chinese American woman. What I want to find is the blueprint for Asian joy. What's the soy sauce flavored version of that? I'm asking the 5 billion other Asians in the world who must have a clue to share in the comments what makes Asian joy. That is such an important question for me. Is the recipe like 5,000 years of civilization and a bowl of noodles? Maybe I have to be the blueprint for Asian joy. That's not going on my resume.
Question. This actually is a serious question. Why don't you like us Black people? Non-American Asians always gave me the cold shoulder. American Asians were cool and I often hang out with them. Are they just not used to us?
Partially.
Sad to say, but I know that there's anti-Blackness very much so in a lot of Asian American communities. And obviously, unfortunately, anti-Blackness is global. And I think like
it's a very long historical answer.
Yeah.
Some of it has to do with not being used to it. Okay, so colonization happened throughout the whole world when white colonizers took over Asia, Africa, all the other continents. And with that came the belief of anti-Blackness that was instilled upon all of these communities. Now, once those colonizations ended, you were left with this homogenized community where they don't know anyone who don't look like they're all white, all Asian, all South Asian, whatever it may be. And then all of a sudden you fast forward to having technology and Western media, because again, controlled by whiteness, is pushing out this message of that Black communities are gangsters, do this, they do that. And then that media gets pushed out into the world in the form of movies and TV shows. And now you take this homogenized community who has learned anti-Blackness through colonization and stuff like that, on top of the fact that it's then mixed with people who are learning about these races for the first time through fictionalized television that is controlled by white media. And then you have this biased look. So when they meet Black people for the first time, they're having to reconcile what they have been essentially brainwashed into thinking versus then trying to figure out what that means when they meet you and they're like, but you're not any of these things. Which is the reason why you get a lot of people from Asia who are having to go through that discovery, and Asian Americans who grew up with that and know that those are things that are essentially propaganda, mind washing, to keep upholding this idea of, and instead of using the WS word, I'm going to say anti-Blackness because one is,
hand in hand, and they push this anti-Blackness, then it's basically global propaganda. So then people are trying to, come to those terms. And instead of just being hateful, they may just not understand. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I think that's like the short end of it.
Yeah. I mean, I have nothing to contribute. That was very concise. A lot of people are just conditioned to believe that Black people are whatever the conditioner wants you to believe they are.
Yep.
And, like my grandma, the only Black people she had ever seen were American soldiers in Korea. And to her, they were all part of the same group. And then when she came to America, all she knew about Black people was, like you said, what she had seen on TV, what people had told her. And so she was very distrusting of Black people. And I was like, how Black people are just like everybody else. Like, you know, I go to school with Black kids, like, you know, and she was just like, oh no, you know, they're very dangerous. I'm like, they're not. They're not. This is just what people wanted you to believe. But, you know, what else did she know? You know what I mean? She's just this like, you know, country girl from, you know, uneducated, and is told by everybody in power what to believe. You know, my God is better. My people are better. My guns are better. My, you know, so she's like, okay, well, all of these things are better. So I better side with the better side.
Yep.
So when Asian Americans talk about Black American contribution, the message is simple. Respect people who build the foundation. Learn the history and build unity, not division. Clear? Let me know what you think in the comment. This is Lucas Tech, where you learn, reflect, and stay informed. See you in the next one. I love you.